Hi everybody, this is Bruce with Lebowski Studio, and today's little adventure is going to be painting clouds. It's pretty overcast today, so I want to experiment with working with colors that are not too saturated, that sort of thing. So thank you for joining me, and if you're not a subscriber, I invite you to subscribe. And for everyone else, thanks for following my channel. I'm painting on a 7 by 12 inch quarter-inch MDF board. Preliminary stages for blocking out, I'll be using burnt umber.
Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Bruce. So as you saw in the intro, I said I was blocking in with burnt umber, and I switched over to using just the local colors of the subject. And also, it was a little bit of a cloudy day starting, but as you'll soon see, the sun came out. So working with low-key, low saturated elements was out of the question today. Just got to adapt as you go along. So just a little time lapse to get rolling here. And now I'll show you how I'm blocking in. Sorry for the reference pictures a little in the way there. Just wanted you to see what I was painting from. That's the original, what I was looking at before the sun came out. So you could see it was pretty dark and that sort of thing. So should have known it's going to change. You just got to adapt. So, and I'm just cutting around. I left that foreground bush, as you can see, and it really sets off, brings that a little forward, creates some depth in an otherwise potentially boring scene. Just getting some mixtures of the cad yellow pale, cad yellow, some cobalt, some ultramarine, kind of mixing them up in different ratios to create some different color greens, so not all the trees are the same green, which would be quite boring. And I like the format that I'm working on, the 7 by 12. It's a pretty cool format. And one thing which I'm going to do later, I didn't do it in this piece, is I'm really going to soften up the value of the background hill. It was pretty strong, but I think it's really going to add to some depth in the painting. So I will be working on that later on in the studio. Just kind of working on getting the sky going now. As you can see, there's a milky sort of band at the horizon there that I'm trying to mimic to get in there. So in this piece, I did sort of chase the light when the sun came out, but it's still, the sky's still red as believable even when the sun was out. So I stuck with it. I didn't change the sky. It's a very subtle difference between the more saturated parts I'm putting in now and that milky band as I progress into the painting and mixing the tones together. So you, of course, can see the clouds that I started with, that I stuck with throughout the piece. They, of course, disappeared as the breeze picked up and the sun came out. Using some cobalt, some white. And I think what I'm going to do, I carry, like in my paint box, I carry three the primaries, blue, red, and yellow, and 3 of each one. In case, depending on what I'm painting, I want to switch up the palette. And so I've got some Prussian blue in there that I want to try to play with when I'm doing some landscape pieces later on during the summer. So I keep that, the ultramarine blue and the cobalt blue for blues. Yellow, I have a yellow ochre in there along with the cad yellow and cad yellow pale. Well, there's the alizarin crimson, cad red, and then cad red light. So between all those, and then of course burnt umber, some burnt sienna. So between all these colors, I can switch up the palette depending on what I'm painting to achieve the effect I want, rather than just trying to use the same colors for everything that I paint, because there are going to be times when you won't be able to achieve the color you're after for the colors you're working with. So you just have to really kind of work on getting the values correct and the saturation to read as your subject. And as long as you know that going into it, you'll be all right. But if you really want sort of more perfection in matching colors when you're outdoors, you're going to have to use a wider range palette. You just have to experiment. sometimes I just like going with the limited palette to see what range range you can get for the amount of colors. I really use the plein air painting as a lot of exercising, so to speak. So when I go into the studio and do some paintings, I'll have some information to work with. It's almost like exercising for the big event. Say you're a bodybuilder or something, and you got to train for that event and that sort of thing. Just kind of getting that tone of the clouds in there. A lot of shifting going on as I was painting. I mean, this whole piece, I was at it probably an hour and 10 minutes, and it's amazing how quickly light changes. Just kind of getting some base tones in there, using the bristle brush to kind of be the workhorse to get the color layers in there. If I want a little softer effect, I could use a softer haired brush, of course. I didn't work with too many variety of brushes in the painting. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It depends on what I'm working on. Now see, I'm getting some grayish color in the center of those cloud masses to give the effect of a little bit of rim lighting to bring out some depth in the clouds so they don't seem as flat. And I like how the trees that I've done break the line of the hill in the background, so you create some recession, getting that little grayish tone, playing around burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, burnt umber, ultramarine blue, and white, that sort of color combination. Keep it a little warm. I think it's a nice balance with the cool of the sky. Just softening a few edges. Sometimes I'll mix up just a little bit of a different color, just a hint, and then go up and soften the edge, so to speak, as opposed to just having the two colors meet and then blending it too much. Is just to mix up a intermediate color and split the line, so to speak. Find that to be useful sometimes also. Starting to work on the grass a little bit. And what was happening as the sun started to come out was the shadows were coming at me. And I really liked that effect. So it really started to create the rim lighting and all the trees, and then you had the shadows coming at you. So that ended up being quite interesting. You see I cut around where I'm going to put the shadow color later on in that foreground kind of tree shrub thing. Well, it's not a shrub, it's like a trees, but it's in the middle distance there. Here I am putting in that shadow. And I extended it a bit just so there's not too narrow a space between the bottom of that shadow and the bottom of the panel. I'll have it blow off of the panel. And I create a kind of a purpley color to do this, kind of a deep. The alizarin crimson, little ultramarine blue, modulated with some of the green tones I've already pre-mixed to not have it be too bright. Sorry about the picture being in the way there a little bit. I wanted to keep it somewhat large because I didn't zoom in enough when I took it, but just really wanted you to be able to sort of see what's going on there. It's a pretty dark photo. I tried to lighten it up to show you the differences, but it's not that big a deal. I think those reference photos in the corner might be more helpful, like when I'm doing barns or buildings, or that you can really see the angles more. The separation of planes of light and dark. Cutting around that foreground tree in the midground there. I really like putting the light against dark, dark against light. You can see how I'm leaving space to do the rim lighting. So already it's kind of coming along. Varying the greens again, because you do still have some kind of yellow-green, bright yellow-green leaves, because there are some birch trees back in there. Excuse me. And when I work on this in the studio later, I will do putting in a little more detail in terms of some suggestion of tree trunks and a couple limbs, that sort of thing, to add interest. There I am putting the rim lighting on. Now you might want to just automatically make it very bright and sunny feeling, so to speak, but pay attention to kind of what tone of tree you're putting it on, because not every highlight in green is going to be bright and saturated. Landscapes can be very challenging in the summer with all the green, but something to watch for. You'll get more on the birch trees, a little more saturated, but so I tried to vary that rim lighting to keep that interest that way, so not everything's the same. Just trying to soften up that line against the sky of the hill just a bit. And you want to be careful going over it too much. You can see probably I got a little bit of that hill color in the sky, so I'll fix that. And really probably only get away with 2 or 3 strokes, and you got to clean off the brush. I just wipe it on a paper towel. Don't get it too wet with terps. A little distance shot with the time lapse to show you how it's kind of progressing from a distance. I like how everything kind of dips in the middle and then the hill pops up. And then that foreground tree, midground tree I should say, is a bit offset. A little distant shot. Blocking in more of the, getting some more layers on in the greens for the individual trees. Some are blended together, some are not. Now a little detail shot. I don't think you need to see me putting paint on every little thing, so that's why I do some time-lapse parts, just to give you an idea of the progression of how I'm applying it, maybe with the brush. Certain techniques I might use, but other than that. Now those 2 trees were similar in shape, so I'm going in there and breaking up that shape. I don't know why. I think it's the human mind tends to do that, make the shapes the same, so I was trying to step back a bit and look and say, whoa, those 2 are so similar, and trying to adjust that, break it up a bit, probably do a little more too. Working on some background trees, and the highlights will be a little bit, even if it's a little saturated because the same type of tree is in the foreground, it'll be a little more muted because it's further in the distance, just a hint. Even though the sky's not hazy or anything, it'll just give the illusion that stronger saturated colors forward, and then they recede through aerial perspective, mist and humidity and that sort of thing. Using just a small round brush to do this work. And I haven't really introduced the liquid impasto. It's been pretty much just terps I've been using, and I'll build up some more textural things later in the studio. Touching in like a spruce tree just a little bit. I'll do a couple more of those so it's not by itself, but I didn't mess around too much with that because the sky color was wet, of course. Now just creating a little more saturation of the rim lighting halo effect around the clouds to give even a more dimension. Using a round brush, I probably would have, if I'd do it again, might use more of a filbert, soft-haired, a little bigger, maybe about a ½ inch, but this works enough. Kind of lean in and strongly, then I'll go back and play with the edges. I think what I'd like to do in the next sort of puffy cloud or a cloudy day where you have distinct cloud shapes is to just go out there and on some, say, 9 by 12 or 12 by 16 panel, do little vignette paintings, maybe a 4 by 5, do several in one panel, just little cloud studies. Try to really understand how the shading goes on the clouds and that sort of thing would be quite fun and valuable information. Almost wrapping it up for this session. Just putting on final touches. Not the final for this session, I should say. Of course, I'll be working on this in the studio later. But now we're going to go on and until the next plein air adventure. And I'll show you the palette I used.
Right, everybody, this wraps up this painting here on location. I'll finish it up in the studio later on. The clouds have changed quite a bit. Sun's come out, winds picked up. So, you know, the key here is not to be chasing cloud shapes, to pick the clouds you started with and stick with them and try to remember details. I like the rim lighting on the painting, on the trees, and so had a lot of fun with it. And I want to thank you for joining me. Until the next adventure, take care. Bye. The palette I used from left to right is burnt umber, burnt sienna, titanium white, ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, cad yellow pale, cad yellow, alizarin crimson, and cad red, and then just turpentine with the paint today. I'll do the liquid impasto gel later on. Sorry for the wind. Another useful tip if you like painting on glass, of course outside with the Gorilla Box that I have here, you're going to have glare coming off of your glass quite a bit if you don't have an umbrella. So I suggest using non-glare plexiglass. That's what I've been using. Seems to work pretty good. You can see I'm getting an angle from the sun. You can see the reflection, but it's dulled down quite a bit. And that helps a lot. You can pick this up at Home Depot or someplace like that. They sell little handy sheets, I guess you call them. Different sizes, 12 by 16, so on. So try it out. And of course, you don't have to worry about potentially breaking your glass either. Out in the field, if you're on a trip, you can always probably get another piece, but try it out.